Good evening and welcome to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus Lakewood City Council Candidates Forum. For those of you that might be new to the caucus, my name is Steve Holecko. I'm the political director of the organization. And before we talk about the format and introduce the candidates, I'd like to go over a few upcoming events and some links. But we're not going to post the links in the chat. One of the things we found after numerous Zoom meetings is that it's very difficult for some folks to go to the chat and then go back to the event. So what we're going to do is we're going to send everybody that's in attendance tonight an email with the various links so that you can look at it at your convenience and not necessarily have to switch back and forth to the forum. The first link that we're going to send you tomorrow is join the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. Every time we do candidates forums, we know that some people may not be members, they may be supporting one of the candidates. And if you join the Progressive Caucus, when you get the email tomorrow, you'll be eligible to vote on our endorsement vote. And if you don't like the other emails that you start getting, which I think you probably will like because you'll be on our email contact list, we have a very clear unsubscribe button at the bottom because we don't want folks getting our emails who don't want to get our emails. The second link you'll be getting is a donate link. Now, those of you that are Progressive Caucus members, you know that we are all volunteer funded, all volunteer staff, and we depend on small contributions from folks to keep our office going, to pay for our supplies. And if you could donate a little bit, it's always greatly appreciated. Also, some upcoming Progressive Caucus events. Tomorrow evening, we have our Cleveland Heights Mayoral Candidates Forum. And then in July 20th, we have our July membership meeting. And the topic of that meeting mostly is going to be what would a progressive Cuyahoga County Democratic Party look like? And it kind of piggybacks off of our May membership meeting where we introduced our precinct project and how we are hoping to make the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party more progressive next year with the precinct committee elections. We also at that meeting will have an update from the Nina Turner campaign as we get closer and closer to the August 3rd primary for the 11th Congressional District special election. And finally, on July 26th, we are having our City of Cleveland Mayoral Candidates Forum. And we've got all of the major candidates confirmed so far, except a few. Some haven't filed yet. So if you're interested in Cleveland politics, that should be a great event. Now, as far as the format of tonight's event, after we introduce the candidates, we're going to have a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate, followed by 5 questions submitted by you guys, the audience. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question, and then we'll close with a 2-minute closing statement. Now, one of the things, when we do these forums live, we have a random drawing for the order, but it's difficult to have a random drawing on Zoom. So we're going to start the opening statements alphabetically by last name, and then we're going to rotate the order throughout the questions and the closing statement so that each candidate will sometimes go last, which you have the advantage of thinking more and hearing what the other candidates say, but then sometimes you'll go first and not have that advantage, and then sometimes you'll go in the middle. Before we introduce the candidates, though, I want to introduce Deb Kline, who is our tech person and co-host this evening, and she's going to talk a little bit about the technical aspect.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight. Just so you know, the chat has been turned off. We pre-screened the questions, so Steve and I will be asking the questions tonight. So no chat, and we are not asking people to raise hands. So that's what our format will be tonight. The candidates know how long they have to speak. I will be giving them a warning and then cutting them off if they continue and go past the deadline. So it's just a little bit of what we're doing tonight with the technology. Steve.
Thank you, Deb. And now let me introduce the candidates. Kyle Baker, Lakewood City Councilman Tom Bullock, Lakewood City Councilperson Sarah Kepple, Lakewood City Councilman Tristan Rader, Laura Rodriguez-Carbone, former State Representative Mark Schneider, and Susannah Selnick. Okay, time for the opening statements. And Kyle, you are first up.
Great. First, thank you to Steve and Deb for putting this on, the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus, and the other candidates. Putting yourself out there to run isn't easy, and I appreciate that all of us are here trying to make our city better. I'd like to just introduce myself and give a little background on who I am, so all of you are aware. I grew up in Lakewood. I went to Lakewood City Schools. Interestingly enough, I would be the only member of Lakewood City Council that went to Lakewood City Schools. From there, I went to Miami, Ohio, got an undergrad degree, went to Ohio State, got my law degree. And backing up a little bit, you know, growing up in Lakewood, I came from a union background. My dad's a union carpenter, youngest of 7 kids, actually first in my family to obtain a college degree. And I credit a lot of that to Lakewood, the Lakewood community, the Lakewood City Schools. So I just have a tremendous desire to give back. After graduating from law school, I went to a law firm here in town. I was lucky enough to work for Thompson Hine. I loved my colleagues. I loved the work I did, but I felt the calling of public service and went into Cleveland Metro Parks. So for the past 6 or 7 years, I've been working at Cleveland Metro Parks. I'm the director of real estate, so I run all of our land acquisition and land management, and also legal counsel. So I review all of our construction contracts and the procurement for all the capital construction we do. So a lot of the tremendous assets you see opening this summer, I was honored to have a hand in helping. Little background on my Lakewood community background. I was the president of the Lakewood Rangers Education Foundation for a few years, helped transition that organization away from scholarships for graduating seniors towards current programming going on in the schools, and was also on Planning Commission for 6 years. So was chair last year. Really enjoyed that service. Got to help plan the community from outdoor dining
10 seconds
to large scale redevelopment projects. And I look forward to this forum, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Kyle. Tom?
Thank you. Deb, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, super. Well, thank you to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus for holding the first forum of the election season. It's good to be with you and with all of the candidates. This is our first foray together, and so I look forward to hearing from the others who, as Kyle said, put themselves forward. And thank you for your service. And also, you know, Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus is probably pound for pound the most activist and most hardworking group of citizens, or among them, around in Ohio. So we need your work to make us better, and thank you for that. So I've had the privilege and honor of serving on Lakewood City Council since 2008 for 3 mayors now. Stan Austin was heavily involved in my first election. Hi, Stan. I see old friends like Eric Deemer, who came from my roots in South Bend, Indiana. I'm among those who have found Lakewood and made it my home by choice. I fell in love with Lakewood. Of all the Northeast Ohio cities that I came across when I moved here for work in the region in 2004. And now I'm a homeowner, and I've got a family, and my kid just graduated from Grant Elementary. My hope and intention is to continue serving Lakewood, to continue the work that first motivated me in 2008. We've made huge progress on many things in the neighborhoods and the commercial corridors, in innovation on clean energy, and making Lakewood a model green walking city, on addressing discrimination and increasing equality so that Lakewood lives
10 seconds.
more fully up to its welcoming nature. And there's more work to do, and I'd like to do it.
Thank you, Tom. Sarah, you're next.
All right, am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Excellent. So I was fortunate enough to be appointed to council in 2020. And I was fortunate to be unanimously appointed out of over 20 applicants. And I was called to serve then because I felt that I had a very unique set of expertise as both a volunteer community organizer, a small business owner, and as a librarian who served about 20 years in public service, working for and with diverse populations. So I'm hoping to continue to do that work for another 4 years and continue to make Lakewood more accessible, equitable, and sustainable. As an activist, as the lead organizer of Action Together Lakewood area, I worked closely with CCPC leadership as well as other grassroots groups to help organize collective actions on progressive issues, immigration reform, justice and criminal justice reform, protecting our healthcare, particularly women's healthcare and reproductive justice, sustainability measures as far as keeping the Great Lake restoration intact, funding intact, and helping to try to end family separation, among many other things, including multiple impeachment rallies and other activities. So since being on council, I have worked hard and proactively to bring members of Lakewood's community in, all of the stakeholders, making it more accessible through the use of technology, and reaching out to all members of our community to bring everyone into the conversation. So I look forward to working with everyone tonight and hearing what everyone has to say, and thank you to CCPC for putting this on.
Thank you, Sarah. Tristan.
All right, hi everyone, Tristan Rader, currently serving on Lakewood City Council. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Steve, and the whole group for allowing me to be here today. I want to give you a little bit of background on where I came from and what I did right after college. I worked for the Cleveland Food Bank. It was my first real job after college. And what I did for them was I signed people up for food stamps full time. Signed thousands of people up for food stamps. It was a great gig. The Cleveland Food Bank wisely knew that nonprofits could only go so far in meeting people's needs, and they needed to engage with government in order to actually meet the needs of society, right? In order to actually begin to address issues. That's why they developed the program, which I served with, to help people connect with government benefits. From there, I realized that I really wanted to be where I could do the most good, and that was going to be in government. So I went back to school, got my MPA. After that, I finished that up, and I met people like Steve Holecko not too long after, when a gentleman from independent senator from Vermont was running for president, and ended up joining his campaign, and we traveled the country with Bernie Sanders. After that campaign, we came home, and I joined up with Steve and Ivanka and a couple others, and we transitioned the Bernie campaign into what is known now as Cuyahoga Progressive Caucus. With the caucus, we fought for a $15 minimum wage in Cleveland. We fought toe-to-toe with billionaires like Dan Gilbert and fought the Q deal. And from then, we decided we needed to do more. We needed to transition this organization into something that would last longer than the Bernie Sanders campaign, and longer than us. And we decided to help people run for office, right? And I was one of the first out of the gate. I actually went in there, and I was one of the first candidates that CCPC supported in 2017, and we actually won a seat on city council. There, we did all kinds of amazing things. We did raise the minimum wage for city employees. We passed paid parental leave, 100% green energy commitment, created the first park in a long time, and lifted our pit bull ban. There's so much more we can do together. I really want to gain your support so we can continue to do this great work we're doing.
Thank you, Tristan. And Laura, you are next.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for putting this on this evening, and thank you for all, to all the folks who joined us. I scanned the chat, and I know all of you. So it's nice to see that folks are still engaged and caring about their representation in Lakewood. I'm Laura Rodriguez-Carbone. I've been a member of CCPC since 2016. Many of you know who I am or have seen me at various CCPC events and campaigns over the years. I'm currently the co-chair of Lakewood's Anti-Racism Task Force, and I'm also the Midwest Regional Communications and Outreach Leader for the federal COVID response. I'm a first-generation Puerto Rican. My parents were farm laborers and factory workers, and I've seen firsthand how hard it is to navigate systems that are not designed for you or your family's needs, and I've dedicated my life to public service because of that, and I've established a long record of advocacy for people whose voices are often unheard. You know, as a daughter of an immigrant, I know the realities of trying to navigate these systems, and that our local representatives and our local government has such a big role to play in our quality of life. So that's why I feel it's even more important that those who are developing programs or passing our laws reflect the lived experiences of their communities and the futures they're trying to build. I'm running for city council to raise the voices of everyone in this community, regardless of race, ethnicity, sex, identity, income, or ability. I'm running to bring people into the public process that are not there now, and to do the work necessary to help our city recover from this pandemic. And over the past year, we've learned how important public health is, not only to our families and seniors, but to our schools and businesses. So I'm running to put a focus.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, Mark Schneider.
Thank you, Steve. Folks, friends, my name is Mark Schneider. I live over in the Gold Coast in the Meridian building, and it is with humility and enthusiasm I come to you tonight as a 3-year member of this organization and ask for your support. I think you're going to ask 3 questions of the candidates tonight. Do they share our progressive beliefs? Do they have the courage to do what is right with those beliefs? And number 3, do they have the experience and track record of doing so? And I would submit to you, I can answer affirmatively to all 3 of those questions. I come to you with 20 years of public service experience at the state, county, and local level as a prosecutor who has handled capital murder cases, child victim cases, investigated public corruption, prosecuted corrupt police officers and firemen when they break the rules, and the Catholic Diocese investigation. As a law director who works with mayors and city councils on a daily basis to do the kind of work we would be doing in council. And as a former state representative who fought for expansion of Medicaid, who fought for good paying jobs through the film tax program, who fought for senior citizen housing benefits, and who voted to make sure that we classify sexual orientation as a protected class for housing discrimination. I come to you as a friend who knows many of these members of the group from before this group was started, when we, arm in arm, when I campaigned 6 years ago, talked about the hospital closing, which I opposed. I welcome my fellow candidates tonight. I welcome to learn a little bit more about each of you and have everybody learn about us. Thank you very much. I'm Mark Schneider.
Thank you, Mark. Susannah Selnick.
Hi, thank you, Steve. Thanks, Deb, for having me tonight. I know we all would rather be in person, but being together by Zoom has allowed my parents to also log in from Chicago, so I'm very happy to have a virtual platform, and hello to them. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am Susannah Selnick. I have been a Lakewood resident for 12 years. I moved here after my graduation from Case Western Reserve University and a subsequent MBA from Cleveland State University. And like many 20-somethings, I thought I'm going to move to New York City and make it big, doing who knows what, but Lakewood very quickly became home, and it's remained my chosen home since that time. I represent a group of people in Lakewood that are currently underrepresented on city council. I'm a non-homeowner and I don't have children, and I utilize the city in a very different way from all of my fellow candidates. But I also represent 60% of the Lakewood population who are non-homeowners. And part of that voice that needs to be heard, and there are services and programs that need to be accounted for that population. My professional work is in nonprofit development, so I work every day with underserved, underrepresented, and under-resourced communities, and I see firsthand the work that needs to go into providing thorough, accessible, equitable programs for those different populations. And I want to make sure that on council, we are putting intentionality behind the decisions that we are making to include everybody in Lakewood, regardless of your nation of origin, your income level, your age, your physical or intellectual abilities, your gender, your religion, all of those different things that make Lakewood a wonderful and vibrant and diverse place to live. And I want to make sure that I am a voice for all of those here on council. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Susannah. Deb's got the first question.
Okay, the first question for all of our candidates is, what approach do you support for funding required water sewer updates? The order will be Selnick, Baker, Bullock, Kepple, Rader, Rodriguez-Carbone, and Schneider. So we are starting with Susannah Selnick.
Thank you. So this is an interesting question. As someone who lives in a multi-story, multi-family dwelling, I have about 120 neighbor doors in my apartment building, and utilities are a big deal for us. Currently, our building is not separately metered, so I understand the need for being able to, hold for residents to be able to pay for the utilities that they're using in a fair and equitable way. And I think this is one of the main issues that affects renters and non-homeowners in our city, is how are landlords or management companies responsible for divvying up those different utility costs and usage rates amongst the different users of those services. I also know that the city gets tremendous revenue from the water bills that are paid, but not from the sewer system. So there are some caveats that need to be made there. While water usage may be down in the city because people are conserving or just being smart about their usage, that's lending itself to a decrease in revenue for the city. So there certainly are some decisions to be made. It's a complex issue, I know that, but I think we need to truly take in.
Thank you, Susannah. Next up is Kyle Baker.
Thank you. Yes, and this is, I think, one of the biggest issues that's facing the city now. I think the mayor has indicated that at least half of the money that they expect to receive from the Recovery Act will go towards some of the sewer infrastructure upgrades. I have some experience here. I actually represented the city of Akron when I was at Thompson Hine when the feds sued them for their violations of the Clean Water Act. So I deeply understand that you need to be proactive in the way that you do this. Now, the question is how do we equitably charge for these upgrades that we need? And I think actually the impervious surface fee is more equitable than charging based on water usage, because, for example, a large parking lot may not consume water, but it actually has a worse effect on wet weather conditions towards our wastewater treatment center. So a discussion, and I believe tomorrow night, the
10 seconds.
Starting that discussion is very important, but I think it needs to be equitably and fairly distributed amongst our city.
Thank you, Kyle. Next up is Tom Bullock.
Deb, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Great, thank you. So meeting our clean water obligations are expensive, but they're important and we benefit. I want to start by acknowledging that nobody benefits more if Lake Erie is clean than Lakewood residents who live right on top of Lake Erie, whether that means at Lakewood Park we enjoy it, or Edgewater Park or Huntington Beach. So we should be doing this work. We're required to do this work. We want to do this work. It's less expensive when we do what Lakewood has been doing, which is to plan carefully, understand how our sewer system works, avoid expensive repairs, and get ahead of the cost. That said, I think what the question drives at is affordability is hurt, especially for seniors and low moderate income folks, when we can look forward at another $100 million approximately of capital needs. So the way to handle
10
it
seconds.
is use a big portion of the federal funds that are in front of us now and change the formula to incentivize.
Next up is Sarah Kepple.
Thank you. So I'd actually recently just met with the mayor about this issue. As Kyle mentioned, she is proposing that we use about half of the American Rescue Plan funds for this purpose. That, of course, would be up to council to determine, but I do think that that is a potential good use of those funds to help reduce the cost on taxpayers. And one of the other things is that permeable and non-permeable surface, assigning a non-permeable surface fee to large parking lots and other areas. One of the concerns that I had when I met with the mayor that we discussed was about making sure that for our lower income residents and for renters in particularly, we know landlords will pass on that cost to their renters. So I want to make sure that we are keeping that in mind as we establish that rate structure.
Next up is Tristan Rader.
Thank you. I think a lot of really smart people, smart candidates, got great competition here because they hit the nails in the head already. We have to use that Recovery Act money, at least half of it, towards paying down some of these future improvements. The plan that we're on is a good plan. It's been well laid, but the water rate hikes do become regressive at a certain point, and we need to make sure that we are doing this in the most equitable manner possible. I'm totally with the mayor and her plan to use the impervious pavement or impervious surface charge. We also need to be looking more long-term in how we do private side and investments and just different ways as technology progresses so that we can become innovative. There's cities around the country and municipalities, counties that are getting really innovative with how they're doing their water, reclaiming their water before it spills into places like their lakes and rivers. So I think we can get creative. We can find solutions that aren't onerous on those least able to pay, essentially.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura Rodriguez-Carbone.
Thank you. So in Lakewood, I will say that our housing costs have skyrocketed, and the ability to afford those housing costs have decreased because of the economic downturn we've seen during this pandemic. I agree with everything that's been said to do anything we can to relieve that burden from our homeowners, but also to do what we can to minimize passing along that cost to our renters. So I think as time moves on, I think we can look at maybe other federal dollars that can actually be utilized by the city to supplement the American Rescue Plan dollars and work to make sure that we are taking the ability to pay into account when we are actually calculating these rates.
10 seconds. And Mark Schneider.
Thank you, Deb. This is a serious matter. It's an EPA mandate. We're all going to bear this burden. There's been talk of the American Rescue Plan dollars, the Recovery Act going towards this. I'm supportive of a great amount of that money being utilized to bring down those costs that all of us are going to have to bear. I would say that this is a specific issue that touches on a bigger issue facing our community, which is affordability, that disproportionately affects seniors. Seniors should be allowed to grow old in Lakewood, to remain in their homes, and do so in an affordable manner. My preference in handling this burden is to give preference to seniors and make sure they're getting their fair cut of that Recovery Act to offset this cost that we're all going to have to bear. Thank you.
Okay, the next question deals with diversity, and the order for this question is Schneider, Selnick, Baker, Bullock, Kepple, Rader, and Rodriguez-Carbone. The question is, how can Lakewood support a more diverse, inclusive city government? Mark, you're first.
Thank you. Diversity is the greatest strength of any community. And I mean diversity of ethnicity, diversity of race, diversity of creed, diversity of age, diversity of wealth background. Lakewood is fortunate to have a diverse culture, and we want to keep it that way. It would be my priority as a councilman to encourage that the people that work for our city look like the people who live in our city, meaning that it would be a diverse body. In addition to that, we'd be encouraging diversity through strong adherence to anti-discrimination policies, making sure that we're reaching out to the flashpoints of each diverse community in order to make sure that folks feel they have a voice at City Hall, and making sure that we carry that out with our private sector partners as well. Diversity would be a priority for Mark Schneider.
Thank you, Mark. Susannah.
Thank you. So, I agree with Mark's sentiment that diversity is certainly at the core, but going beyond just racial and diversity task force and community discussions, I think we need to really be very intentional about how we put these actions into place. Lakewood is home to one of the largest per capita prevalences of resettled refugee and immigrant families in the state. And I think that we have a lot of opportunity there to offer incentives or offer some sort of formal programming, especially through the city government, to hire those folks as they move into our city, give them sustainable employment, and allow them to participate in the government where they're choosing to live, or where they've been, where they've resettled to live, and really welcome them into what makes Lakewood so wonderful. And outside of city government formally, also looking at our recreational activities. How are we making sure that we are reaching out beyond just our white communities or just...
Thank you, Susannah. Before we move on, I want to repeat the question because I just got a text from one of the candidates that a motorcycle drove by when I was asking it, and so they couldn't hear it. So in fairness, I'm going to repeat it. The question is, how can Lakewood support a more diverse, inclusive city government? And Kyle, you're next.
Thank you. I think it's a great question. And, I think, Susannah and Mark hit on a couple good points, right? Making sure our workforce in the city government is diverse. We have diverse candidates. I think it's also, to Susannah's point about refugees, going to Lakewood High School, I went to school with a lot of kids from war-torn areas, from Bosnia and Serbia at the time I was in high school. And now we have a large refugee population in Lakewood now. So I think it's really coordinating with groups like Asia Services, Inc. that resettle refugees, making sure they have what they need, partnering with the school district to ensure that those students and those families get all the resources that they need to get. When I was on the Education Foundation, we helped fund some of the after-school programs for those children to make sure that they were integrated into the community and they felt welcome and that they knew that Lakewood was a place for everyone. So I think things like that are very important.
Thank you, Kyle. Tom?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. I find common ground with some of the answers others have said. Diversity is a core attribute. It's a strength. I think it begins in neighborhoods, in block clubs, in schools, when we're welcoming in and upon the experiences and the insights of everyone in our neighborhoods. I mean, look what we're doing in Madison Park, essentially got an outdoor community center around Lakewood basketball. That's city government. That's not at a city council meeting, but that's important because the innovation bubbles up from the community, and it works best and strongest when it bubbles up from the community. So I would keep looking for ways to open up the bureaucracy of city government. That means public works department. That means city council meetings, to be inclusive as much as we can. And that means listening and inviting people in.
Thank you, Tom. Sarah?
Thank you. So actually, this is something that I've been working on very strongly since I've been on council. I work closely with the Anti-Racism Task Force. Councilman Rader and I worked together to introduce and get started a conversation about our use of force policies in our police force. And I wrote and passed a resolution to require all members of council, the mayor, and the administration to participate in the 21-day Racial Equity and Social Justice Challenge, which of course is just one step to continuing work. So that's something that I look forward to doing in my next term, would be extending that diversity, equity, and inclusion training, as well as on the ADA task force where I serve, to make sure that all of our public properties in the city are ADA accessible so that everyone can participate fully and use all of our resources. I've also worked to extend parental leave with the mayor.
Thank you, Sarah. And Tristan.
Thanks. I have to first acknowledge the work that Sarah's done on this, really. I mean, the work just in the last couple of years through the murder, the horrendous murder of George Floyd and all the issues that brought up. And I think really talking to folks in the street too, policing is really where we have to start, and we can always do better. Because, you know, the experience of somebody who doesn't look like me when they run into a police officer on the street is going to be different. And we have to make sure that we're doing policing in the most inclusive way we can. Community safety doesn't have to need more police uniformed officers on the street. And we've started that process. We started that hard conversation of moving our police force a slightly different direction. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can do right now to make Lakewood the most welcoming, friendly place, because that's what I hear from people knocking doors is, you know, we've had a history in this city of over policing, but it's gotten better lately and we can still continue to do better there.
Thank you, Tristan. Laura.
Hi. So I would be remiss to say that as the only person of color sitting here and the only person of color running for city council, my belief in this is that in order to ensure equity, you must include representation. In 132 years, the whole history of Lakewood, we've never had a person of color serve as mayor or serve as a member of city council. There is a huge disconnect between people of color here in Lakewood and our city government. The fact of the matter is, though, is that communities will reach out to you if they trust you. And they're more likely to reach out to you if you look like them and can connect with them on their experiences. So, you know, to me,
10 seconds.
The most important thing we can do in Lakewood to ensure equity is to elect someone of color to represent those of color.
So our next question is around housing. What steps should Lakewood take to improve the housing affordability? The order is going to be Rodriguez-Carbone, Schneider, Selnick, Baker, Bullock, Kepple, and then Rader. And so, Laura, we're going to start with you.
Hi, thank you so much. So affordable housing, especially now, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and the rise in evictions that we saw, especially during last year, is specifically on my mind. And you know, I think there's a lot we can do to establish resources for residents and, you know, and frankly, those who rent, to make sure that we can avoid displacements. You know, in addition to that, I think our commitment to to affordable housing needs to be reflected in the affordable housing we're actually building and the formula we use to determine the statistical average income. Right now, it's higher than the average income of the folks who live in Lakewood. So I definitely believe that there's a lot that can be done in this area.
Thank you. And next we have Mark Schneider.
Thank you, Deb. This is yet another tie-in to one of the largest overarching issues of this campaign and facing this city, which is affordability, which is going to disproportionately affect seniors and disadvantaged individuals. To focus on senior citizens, I would insist on and work towards a percentage of any new residential housing being affordable housing. Number two, I would be looking for rebates and incentives for landlords that offer affordable housing. Number three, I would work with groups like Lakewood Alive to partner to provide microloans so that seniors could pay for housing improvements so they could afford to stay in their homes. I'd devote a good portion of that American Rescue Fund towards the sewer and water costs to defer these expenses. And I would also insist on our healthcare partners continuing to provide affordable healthcare for our senior citizens. Thank you.
And next we have Susannah Selnick.
Thank you, Deb. So this actually has been one of the top conversations I've been having with residents all over the city as I've been going door to door. And it truly is affecting people at every end of the income spectrum, whether we want to recognize that or not. So the rising home values, while that looks great on paper, it is affecting seniors who are, or folks who are retired and living on a fixed income, who are no longer able to afford their property taxes because of the swift rise in their property values, which is due to neighboring new developments that may have certain tax abatements tied to them, but it's also affecting our lower income residents and particularly our renters whose landlords are also having to raise the price of housing and pricing individuals out of their homes. I've heard from people who have been priced out of their home from their landlord, or people who have lived here for 50 years and are now considering moving because they can no longer.
Thank you, Susannah. Next up is Kyle Baker.
Thank you. And this issue, I've heard it a lot as I've been knocking on doors, and it's near and dear to my heart. My mother actually lives in a subsidized housing unit in Lakewood, and I'm terrified that, they may try to turn it into market rate and kick her out. So it concerns me, but I think we've all been feeling the pressure, but I think we need good data to understand, is it just the for sale market? Is it just the rental market? Is it just the big multifamily buildings? So I think partnering with an organization like Lakewood Alive to do a study to really understand where the pressure's at, right? I think we all feel it, but when you get good data, then it enables you to make good decisions to affect certain parts of that market, right? Affordable housing is a regional issue, and it's affecting us here in Lakewood. And I think we need good data to be able to make and come up with good solutions from other cities and areas that have dealt with these issues, because they're not new. They're just new to Lakewood, and we need to address them acutely with the right tools.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
And next we have Tom Bullock.
Hi, everyone. So there's no silver bullet. It's a silver buckshot, a blend of many strategies. Some of the other candidates have very good remarks that I agree with. First, new affordable housing, wherever we can do those. We are doing that thing. In fact, this week, a couple of homes in Birdtown are going for sale. In the Solov project, the new developments at Detroit in 2 locations, we require 10% of those units thereabouts. And what's exciting there is those will be affordable housing, new build, not segregated somewhere, but integrated into a wonderful new neighborhood and building. Lakewood Alive is doing good work. I'm on their board, helping people stay in their homes and save on utilities and repairs. That's a big part of affordability, is making use of programs and funds that are already there, but there's some complexity to it. So training, and saving on sewers, saving on municipal broadband, which would be a great idea if.
Thank you, Tom. Next, we have Sarah Kepple.
Thank you. So this is something I was actually just talking about last night on the Housing Planning and Development Committee, where we just moved for a piece of legislation forward to sell the 2 new homes that the city has built as part of the federal home project. These are both accessible homes, so not only are they affordable, they're accessible. They are at 80% of the median income, and as we mentioned, that may be higher than the average income for a Lakewood resident. We could go lower, but that depends on, they still would have to pay the taxes, the property taxes on those, which are set by the county. So one of the things we can do is continue to work with our county and state legislators to help with those costs and advocate for our seniors. and work with Lakewood Alive and also fund Lakewood Alive so they can continue to do their work, helping people stay in their homes.
Thank you, Sarah and Tristan.
Thank you. A lot of great ideas here. I wish we could discuss this because there's so much going on. There's so many great things. We have an 8-step affordability plan. You've heard many of the steps brought forward by my colleagues and other people on this call. One thing I want to implement here soon, I've been working on, is a housing affordability task force to really dig into this. We have the opportunity to be zoned as a whole city. We did that in 2019, where, like Tom had mentioned, there's rent controlled portions of new project development. Something I've introduced and I would like to introduce again and pass is a source of income protection, so that folks that are on disability or they have a voucher can find a home here in Lakewood, and they're not going to be turned away simply because of the means by which they pay. We know that 90+% of people in Cuyahoga County who have vouchers are African American. By saying that we don't accept vouchers, or when homeowners say or landlords say they don't accept vouchers, they're saying they don't accept people of color. I mean, that's just a flat out fact, and we need to address that head on.
Thank you, Tristan.
The next question deals with a topic that a lot of you touched on within the infrastructure section, and that is the American Rescue Plan Act. And the order for this question is going to be Rader, Rodriguez-Carbone, Schneider, Selnick, Baker, Bullock, and Kepple. The question is, what should Lakewood prioritize when allocating the funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds? Tristan's first up.
Right. I think that 25 million is crucial. I think the mayor had the right idea. We got to put that into the weather improvement projects to bring down our rate hikes for water and just do the right thing. A proposal I put forward immediately was to dedicate $1 million of that to a participatory budgeting process, whereby folks within the community can actually vote on the projects they want to see move forward. This has been done in many places. New York City uses it. Cambridge, Massachusetts uses this program successfully. It's a great way to, and we've been talking a lot about how we need to engage more people in the decision-making process. This is a great way to do direct democracy, to get as many people as possible involved in choices of what projects we should be doing here in Lakewood. So that's one innovative thing we should do. There's another, a lot of proposals out there, but making sure that we're doing the right thing by our water system, I think, is the number one issue. And then also opening that up for more participation and more democracy, I think is good.
Thank you, Tristan. Laura.
Hi, thank you so much. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I've spent the past year working as part of FEMA to plan and to respond to emergencies, is emergency planning. Our businesses, our small businesses in particular, have been hit very, very hard. Those folks need some relief. I think we need to establish a community advisory board to figure out how we spend those dollars and what the needs are in our community. And I really think for the future, we should establish a fund to provide some of the same help and assistance that was provided by the George administration during the pandemic. People are hurting right now. They're trying to recover, and we need to focus on our recovery here in Lakewood.
Thank you, Laura. Mark?
Thank you. As a 3-year member and former co-chairperson of the Citizens Advisory Committee, I've gotten to experience taking federal dollars and allocating them through our city government. We've been spending those monies on services for seniors, nonprofit and government organizations that help the disadvantaged. Here we're talking about a generational sum of money coming to us for the first time. This is going to tie into strategic planning and fiscal prudence to keep our taxes low and make sure that we're providing for the people who are disadvantaged the most, like our senior citizens. Again, I've already talked about the fact that I would allocate a large amount of that one-time money towards infrastructure improvement for our sewer and water rates to make sure that we're keeping that reconstruction at the lowest cost possible, particularly for our seniors. I'd be looking at one-time capital expenses for this money.
Thank you, Mark. Susannah?
Thank you, Steve. So I worked a lot during 2020 on facilitating a lot of applications for small businesses, for nonprofits to receive some of the CARES Act funding. So I've seen firsthand the dire need that many individuals and businesses and nonprofit agencies are still in. So I would prioritize our people first, making sure that people are able to meet the needs of their utility payments, food insecurity, housing security, and making sure that people are staying in their homes and having their basic daily needs met. Second, we need to look at our small businesses. More than 90% of Lakewood's economy is based on small businesses, and this has been a terrible, terrible thing that has happened to them. So providing support and ongoing support for those businesses, also offering hiring incentives.
10 seconds.
And also looking at the nonprofits that serve our community. They were hit tremendously hard and provide vital services to our community, and we need to support them as well.
Thank you, Susannah. Kyle?
Yes, I echo a lot of the statements of the other candidates. I think first and foremost, the mayor has proposed spending half the money on sewer upgrades. I think that number may even need to go up depending on what some of the responsibilities the city has for those things. I think deferred capital maintenance is the big one, right? Because you get these funds once. It's like the only time the cavalry has ever come from federal government to save a city government, right? So we really need to make sure we use these resources well. At the last council meeting, there was a lot of discussion about some of the city's deferred maintenance on some of the parks and baseball fields and soccer fields. I think that may be a good use of those funds. Leveraging those dollars for other outside dollars to make the pie bigger would be a good way to do it. And I do think that Councilman Rader's idea of participatory budgeting, the details would obviously have to be worked out, but I think there needs to be a community conversation about where some of this.
10 seconds.
It's a generational opportunity to infect the lived environment of our city.
Thank you, Kyle. Tom?
So I've got many ideas. We'll talk in a couple of weeks for the first time formally in city government, but I'd like to see backlog repairs to sports fields made. That's an important issue. Shouldn't be too expensive. More parks improvements. Let's address learn from home deficits and work from home deficits if people have broadband access problems. That's not a nice to have any longer. It's a must have. There's an equity issue for sure when it comes to learn and work from home. Stimulus for performing arts is an idea that Dan O'Malley put forward and others really hurt by COVID. I'd like to see that. Those can all be greatly innovative, low cost ideas that we should do. I agree with others saying that the lion's share should go strategically well spent for infrastructure, especially sewer infrastructure. If we do it well, we can lower costs for seniors. I'd also love to see the participatory democracy initiative and mature tree conservation. Stay tuned. That's a big idea. I think we should.
Thank you, Tom. Sarah?
Thank you. So as most folks have said, obviously the integrated wet weather plan is a big chunk of this. But I would also argue for using a lot of these funds on gun violence prevention. Gun violence is a national epidemic. And what we know from research provided by Moms Demand Action is that it disproportionately affects Black folks and people of color. And one of the ways that some of the things we can do to prevent that are things like environmental design, improving our parks to make them safer, adding mental health resources, which we all need coming out of COVID, and trauma-based, trauma-informed care. We all carry trauma from separation and economic anxiety and various things from that. And then we also know that having community-based solutions, so the Community Stewards program that we've talked about, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, all of these things can actually research-based solutions to gun violence, as well as supporting our small businesses. And as Tom mentioned.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next question is dealing with your progressive values. If you are elected or re-elected, describe one or more progressive initiative you would champion. And the order will be Kepple, Rader, Rodriguez-Carbone, Schneider, Selnick, Baker, and Bullock. And Sarah.
Thank you. So I would like to expand on the anti-racism, the racial equity and social justice training that I have already had passed through council, and expand that to be an annual diversity, equity, inclusion. As we work on our ADA task force, we will be having a plan for remediation of all city properties. I want to see that continued, as well as continue to work on protecting our tree canopy. I have an ordinance in the works for that, to increase public noticing of tree removals and tree maintenance and tree education. And also, as I mentioned, on the gun violence prevention and safety, making sure our approaches to safety are equitable and just, and approach all holistic aspects of safety for the community.
Thank you, Sarah. Next. Oh, I goofed. It should have been. Oh, no, I'm right. Okay. Next one up is Tristan Rader.
Thank you. And yeah, we got to get that tree ordinance done. Thanks for reminding me. So as the chairman of the Sustainability and Public Works Committee, one of the things I'm committed to is accomplishing something I set out to do, and Tom Bullock had worked on this long before I did, but actually accomplishing a climate action plan, Lakewood's first climate action plan. We've already got an RFP out there. We've got a lot of great folks willing to help with that in the community, and engaging folks throughout that process. We've got the Citizens for Sustainable Lakewood group, which cropped up in the last couple of years, and a lot of folks involved with the Green New Deal and Sunrise Movement. Just pulling all those folks together, pulling all the resources together to develop a plan that really addresses climate change on the local level. Again, we committed to 100% renewable energy here. We're the first suburb in Ohio to do that. Those are some steep goals, and we need a plan to get there. I really want to focus really hard on accomplishing it. First developing the plan, then accomplishing that plan as we move through my next term.
And next up is Laura Rodriguez-Carbone. Laura?
Hi, thank you. I would work to reestablish our health department. It'll take some doing to get there. It'll take working with our representatives in Columbus and the city organization, but I think considering that we have lost two of our very supportive public health infrastructures over the last 15 years, our hospital and our health department, and just considering the toll that COVID-19 has had on our residents, we're really not sure what's going on. And we really need to look at making a commitment in our budgeting and in our funding, obviously with the help of the state of Ohio, to making sure that we are providing services for our residents, especially our residents who are underinsured, uninsured,
10 seconds.
and our kids.
Thank you. Next up is Mark Schneider. Mark, you're still muted.
Thank you, Deb. My chief progressive issue that I would like to implement amongst a multitude is, again, affordability of housing for our seniors, allowing seniors to age in place, to remain in their homes, and to remain a vibrant part of this community. I talked to you about methods that I would utilize to accomplish that. Secondarily, you could expect, should I take counsel, that I'd be fighting for diversity within our city government, the highest levels in integrity, transparency, and accountability in our meetings, greater access to the business of city government through communication, and also for a more participatory role in the actual committee hearings and making them accessible. Too many people feel that the government works against them instead of for them, and I would change that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Susannah Selnick. Susannah?
Thanks, Deb. So one thing in my health, I have a healthcare background in my education, and I know that your social determinants of health are largely in this country determined by both your race and your income. And so I think one action that I would propose is working with our BIPOC community and also our refugee and resettled and immigrant community in this city, and incentivizing businesses to hire directly and provide jobs directly to those individuals, or to have the city provide an incentive program or a support program to allow those individuals to start and own their own businesses. that is then raising their income, raising their benefits, raising their social determinants of health and quality of life. And we're directly focusing that on a population that's frequently been overlooked.
Thank you. Next up is Kyle Baker.
Yes, I would focus on sustainability, and one particular issue I think is purchasing that the city does. Right, you can make sure your supply chain is green and sustainable. And the next one is, I applaud the administration and council for making city 100% renewable resource in their power consumption. But I think we could do a better job of amending the building code. In my experience on planning commission, can help with this to make it easier for businesses and residents to understand how to put solar panels on the building. If you go on the city's website now, it's really hard. There's some old links, but really helping and maybe even incentivizing residents and businesses to put solar panels on their houses in a way that is friendly. There's a whole section of the building code on wind farms and windmills, but not on solar panels. And solar panels are more economical for an individual homeowner or a business to put on and reduce their carbon footprint and help bring our city forward as a progressive and
10 seconds.
place. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tom Bullock.
Hi, everyone. So everything I do flows from progressive values. I grew up in a family in a church that taught social justice, and I never understood why Ronald Reagan did the things he did. I even wrote him in 4th grade, tell him to stop having nuclear bombs. I even got the letter still. More specifically, in this year, this year in the coming term, campaign finance reform. There's a tax on democracy all over. Lakewood needs to do a lot more than we have to live our values and lead by example. Participatory democracy. This is a tip of the hat to Tristan. I support that. Let's do that. That can really split the atom of innovation in exciting ways. I've come to realize things happen the best and the most effectively and the most quickly when City Hall is a push from the outside. Finally, a through line for me has always been making Lakewood a model green and walking city.
10 seconds.
It's really a healthy city. Make it a green and healthy place, a place where health happens in neighborhoods. That includes mental health, and that includes opportunity and a quality of life.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, each candidate will now have 2 minutes for closing statements, and the closing statement order will be Bullock, Kepple, Rader, Rodriguez-Carbone, Schneider, Selnick, and Baker. So, Tom, you're up again.
Okay, first of all, thank you again for this forum. Another progressive thing we could do is expand City Council to 11 members, because I've sincerely been impressed by everyone here. All the candidates tonight, I think all could serve well, all had great ideas. As you can hear, we're quoting one another because I think people are informed and come to the topic of good heart and mind. And boy, I would love to work with a strong group like this and help make our city better. I would like to keep working to make the city effective and vibrant and make Lakewood a strong community that keeps getting better in all the ways we discussed tonight. What I've come to learn is that a lot of times I'm working on potholes or stop signs or graffiti removal, and that isn't as high-minded as the constitutional rights at the Supreme Court or stuff that I want to take Trump on for. We do a little bit of that, but our jobs to make Lakewood functional, welcoming, and successful is really some of those progressive things we can do at all, because it's places like Lakewood, our community, where people live diversity and don't just think and talk about it, where people find economic opportunity, where we learn to live with one another. And if you've noticed, all of the most conservative parts of our city didn't vote for Trump a couple of times now. So that's a side benefit. We've got more to do, more to achieve in housing, in the arts, in conservation of trees, and making our city more green and healthy. I'd like to continue doing that, and I ask for your support. Thank you for the time and the opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Tom. Sarah Kepple.
Thank you. We do have a lot of great candidates here tonight, and I was honored when I was unanimously appointed to council because I was selected, and as Council President O'Malley pointed out, I kind of stood out because of my volunteer activist experience, my years of public service, and uniquely as a small business owner. I think one of the things that I would say is that I've been exceptionally productive in my short time on council, doing progressive work and working with my colleagues to get it done. One of the things that I bring to the table is that I'm very good at bringing people together. I've done that with my colleagues and being pragmatic in my approaches to affect a progressive agenda. We've been able to pass resolutions demanding better voter access, condemning the Capitol riots, as well as local things like building our anti-racism capacity, making the city more accessible through the ADA task force, expanding our tree canopy, and many others. So I think that kind of advocacy comes natural to me as an activist who's worked in the trenches with numerous organizations, including CCPC, Indivisible, Action Together Lakewood. I chaired the Northeast Ohio Grassroots Coalition, and I've been proactively inviting people to the table. This isn't just talk. I want to hear from everyone in Lakewood. I want to have conversations with them and take their input into account. And I'm good at doing that, using technology, using communication channels, and bringing everyone together to build a better future here in Lakewood for all of us. So I hope to have your support, and I thank you for your time tonight. And thank you to CCPC for hosting this.
Thank you, Sarah. And Tristan Rader.
Yeah, I think everyone that's on this call is going to have a harder job than us as candidates in trying to pick three of us, because I really am super impressed with the field and just in Lakewood in general. We're a progressive city. We really are at our core. And I just hope that, I know that I have, but some part of me really does hope that I've lived up to the, the progressive roots that I came from, having co-led this organization at one point to where I am on council. But looking back, with having passed the minimum wage for the city, having passed parental leave, committing our city, like I said, committing our city to 100% renewable energy, lifting our pit bull ban, which was unfairly which everybody knows unfairly targets minorities, and continuing the fight for racial justice, standing up and using our voice as city council. Since I started on council, we've done more resolutions in support of things like Medicare for All. In fact, I'll use this moment here to plug something. On next Monday, I'm presenting a resolution at City Council to support the Medicare for All 2021 Act, or Act 2021, in Congress. I'd really encourage you to come to our City Council meeting and support that, because Lakewood is just an amazing place where we're able to use this pulpit, this platform, to support things that we know will help everybody, progressive agendas that we know will end up helping Lakewood and help the country at large. So thank you for engaging with CCPC and being part of this, because part of the vision that I think when we were transitioning this group from Bernie into what it is today, CCPC, it was to make sure that that Cuyahoga County had a progressive conscience, right? There was an organization that was going to represent the values of the left, the things that we see, that vision that Bernie set out, the vision that progressives like FDR and Elizabeth Warren had set out for us, and to continue to move that conversation, arc it towards justice, right? So keep doing the hard work, and thank you so much for this opportunity, CCPC, Stephen, and Deb, and everyone else.
Thank you, Tristan. Next up, Laura Rodriguez-Carbone.
Hi, I want to thank everyone here, both for Steve and Deb and everybody on the line that took the time out of their day this evening, honestly, to care about our city and to listen. Most of you know me. I am a public servant. I've dedicated 20 years of my life to public service. I've served on no less than 21 think tanks, boards, commissions, and task forces. As a person of color, I'm often called when folks need help figuring out, how do we talk to people of color? How do we get through to them? Unfortunately for myself and a lot of folks like me in the community, we're often called as storytellers or to tell a testimony, but we're never called to lead. I want to change that. And I think in order to realize that equitable future we're all envisioning in a progressive future, we can't have that without equitable representation for everyone on council. And I think the first step to that is to make sure that our city council starts to look more like us. So I, am asking for your support and your help. And I want to thank you for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you over the summer.
Thank you, Laura. Mark Schneider.
You muted yourself again, Mark.
Thank you. We're here tonight, we're asking for your trust to decide who can go into city council, who could provide leadership, real leadership for this city, who could get things done. I'm a lawyer who spent my entire career fighting for the little guy. As a prosecutor, I worked in the same courthouses that my grandfather, a union carpenter, used to work for when he worked in the city. As an advocate, 6 years ago when I ran for office as a city council person, when the Cleveland Clinic was looking to take 1,000 jobs out of Lakewood, close our Lakewood hospital and cut off access to health care, Mike Skindle and I were the only two individuals who were out campaigning, running for office against that position. I met many of you during that campaign. When opioid distributors came to our communities and started a plague for a generation of our citizens, I've taken up the national class action against those opiate distributors, and we're winning. When I have young children in the juvenile court going through custody matters that are at risk, I serve as a guardian ad litem to protect and advocate for those children. As a prosecutor, I fight for victims of crime, especially children, for the last 20 years. And I will tell you, I share our progressive beliefs. I've demonstrated that I have the courage to do what is right, even when it is not popular. And furthermore, I am the only candidate with 20 years of experience at the city, county, and state level who could bring that leadership and has a track record of accomplishment in these fields. I ask for your support, and I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank my fellow candidates.
Thank you, Mark. Susannah Selnick.
Thank you, Steve and Deb. Thank you so much for hosting us tonight and for coordinating all of the Zoom logistics, which by now we are all vastly tired of. So I also want to thank all of the attendees who tuned in past 8 p.m. During the work week to listen to us. And thank you to my fellow candidates as well, who all had wonderful ideas. I think one of my co-candidates had said that some of these issues are new to Lakewood and we're just learning how to address them now, but that's not true. These are issues that are not new to Lakewood and they're not new to our country. A lot of the issues that we've talked about tonight, inequity, poor access, affordability, these are long-term problems that have been happening in our city, and it's just that now people are starting to talk about it enough. And I want to be that voice that carries that message forward, but follows it up with work and solutions and solving these long-term problems that are now coming to the forefront of discussions and making real sustainable change for all residents in Lakewood, no matter your income level, your race, your gender, your sexuality, your religion, your age, your housing status, whatever that may be that defines who you are, you will have a voice on council with me there to represent you. I ask for your support, and I thank you again for this evening.
Thank you, Susannah. And finally, Kyle Baker.
Thank you, Steve and Deb and everyone from CCPC for putting this on. Thank you, everyone, for coming on a nice evening to hear us all. So I just want to end with, I owe such a debt of gratitude to Lakewood, the Lakewood community. I was a middle low income kid with a waitress mom and a union carpenter dad and the youngest of 7 kids. And because of Lakewood City Schools, I was told that I need to go to college. I became the first in my family to obtain a college degree. So I derive so much from this community that I feel like I have a social contract, a social obligation to continue to engage and help bring this community forward. Lakewood has been around for a long time. I have a long lens from being here for a long time. I believe we're experiencing fragile prosperity. In order to live your progressive values, you need to make sure that the core city functions are being done, and they're being done in an equitable way. I believe that I can help provide the vision with other city council people to the administration to keep moving this community forward. And I hearken back to something I read today, and Eleanor Roosevelt, I've admired her and really researched her life. And when we're dealing with tough problems, she had a 4-step process. 1 was empathy for the individual, empathy for the problem. 2 was investigation, doing the work to understand the issue, educating yourself on it. The next is education, to figure out solutions and to put those solutions into action. And the last is to evaluate to see if you actually accomplished that problem or accomplished solving that problem. And I believe that she was facing a different time in the 1940s, but I believe a lot of those problems are here today. And I think we can use that 4-step process to really keep moving Lakewood forward.
10 seconds.
And live up to our progressive values. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank all of you candidates. I wish we were live so we could all stand up and give a round of applause, but maybe we can kind of do it like that. Or if there's a Zoom thing to click for applause, do that. Oh, yeah, I see some of you have done that. And just a reminder that either late tonight or early tomorrow, probably early tomorrow, because it takes Zoom a while to upload your emails. You'll get an email with the links and events that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, how to join CCPC, how to donate, our upcoming meetings, and so forth. As far as our endorsement vote, as soon as our tech people can line up the tech properly, and by that I mean is get the applications and questionnaires that the candidates submitted into, I don't know where they put it, but into a place where we can send out a ballot. We'll send an email out to our Lakewood members. Now, only Lakewood members will vote on this endorsement. And the ballot will have the 7 names, a link to the application and questionnaire that each candidate submitted. And the ballot will also have a link to a recording of this forum, in case folks missed it and want to look at it before they cast their ballot. We can endorse up to 3 in this race. And so the ballot will say vote for no more than 3, just like the ballot will say in the primary and in the fall. But one of our requirements for endorsement is that you have to have 50% plus 1. So it may not necessarily be the top 3, but it would be the top 3 that have at least 50% of our membership vote. And what we try to do is we'll send out a couple of separate emails to just Lakewood people. Like we'll send out several reminders. We'll put a link in our newsletter that says, hey, if you live in Lakewood, vote here. And we've got several other suburban endorsements and the Cleveland endorsements at this time as well. But hopefully we get as many of our Lakewood members as possible to vote. So again, thank you for coming tonight. And when you get the email tomorrow, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.